and Board of Aldermen for Tuesday, January the 3rd. Happy New Year to everyone. We are going to start by adopting our agenda for the meeting. I don't have any changes to the agenda. Do you, Ashley?
I don't.
All right, can we have a motion to adopt the agenda as it is?
Motion made. Sorry.
All in favor? Any opposed? A quick mayor's report for you tonight. It is awfully warm in here, so we will try not to keep you any longer than necessary. This is a super old building, and you know the air works, I don't know, maybe 20% of the time, best I can tell. You know, we really don't have a lot to report from the past 2 or 3 weeks. We have, of course, had our Christmas and New Year's breaks, but we did have some freezing temperatures during that period of time that caused a lot of work for our city employees and especially our electric department. And Rob Neely is going to give us an update on some of those things here in a bit. I am excited tonight to get to introduce to you all our dance state champions. I love some girl power, and I'm going to ask y'all to come up here in the front if you don't mind, and I'm going to read their names so that everybody knows exactly who they are. Oh, got the bling on, I hear it. Come on up front and just, yeah, through there, and y'all can just line up across the front. These girls brought home 2 dance state championships, the small varsity pom and small varsity game day. And we have with us tonight 2 captains, Audrey Case and Katie Brewer. We have Kiera Serrano, Maddie Beecham, Amanda Traylor, Ava Kaiser, Caroline Berry, May Maxwell, Graham Sherman, Alice Williamson, Caitlin McConnell, Lucy Perry, and 2 girls who graduated from our Girl Empowerment class, Kamari Jones and Madison Pegues. And I am so proud of you girls. It is, it's always fun to see girls win state championships. I'm proud of how you've represented our community and how you've represented your sport. We also have Coach Jenna Antolik with us tonight. I hope I said that name correct. And we just want to thank y'all for representing your school and representing our community, and congratulations. Would any of you ladies like to say anything? Absolutely. We are thrilled to have you and super proud of you. Thank y'all. Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is to authorize the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on December 20th, 2022. And girls, you all do not have to stay in this hot room for the rest of this meeting. So you feel free to get up and go whenever you're ready.
So,
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Authorize the approval of accounts for all city departments.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? I'll ask you now to consider the consent agenda. You will see that we've got a lot of travel requests tonight. There are a lot of travel requests that are coming up here in the first quarter of this year. If you want to glance through those.
Everything on budget.
Yep.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? And now I'm going to call on Rob Neely, who is our superintendent of Oxford Utilities. I know there were a lot of moving parts, and we tried to relay the information as well as we could to the community as we went through these power outages and things during this super cold time, but there were just a lot of things moving quickly, and I wanted Rob to give you all an update. I was so proud of the way that our utilities department handled it and how Rob handled it and kept the community in the know. So he's just going to give us a brief update of how that worked.
Yeah, I wanted to share this graph because I've gotten a couple questions about were we effective, and I'll go over this graph in a moment, but that looks correct to you.
It does. Mm-hmm.
I've got a couple pages of notes. I don't know how long you want to talk about this, but I just wanted to make sure I covered everything, and I just wanted to, this will be longer than the budget presentation probably. And just like the mayor said,
Okay, you can do that because I'm gonna just, I wrote it all down so I wouldn't miss anything. But on Friday, December 23rd at noon, TVA called a virtual meeting with all their local power company managers to update us on, there's 153 of us, to update us on the status of the grid and the need to conserve power. You probably noticed the Christmas Eve, there was a lot of tweeting going on and Facebook messages about, please conserve your power, turn your thermostat down, stop using energy if you can. And that was going on all over the valley because they had warned us we're in a dire situation. They warned us to conserve power due to generation asset failures. They said that they did not expect to need ELCP Step 50, Emergency Load Curtailment Plan Step 50, and I'll explain that in a second, that night, but that there was a possibility they may need it the following morning to meet the AM peak. They expected to restore some of their lost generation throughout the day, and this was Christmas Eve during that Friday, and add additional capacity from off-the-grid sources on Christmas Eve. The ELCP Step 50 is the Emergency Load Curtailment Plan. It's the fifth step. It's Step 50, but it's the fifth step, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, in load reduction that mandates LPCs reduce load using rolling blackouts on their local systems. It's my understanding that ELCP Step 50 has never been called in 89 years of TVA serving local power companies energy. At 4:53 a.m. on Saturday the 24th, this is Christmas Eve morning, TVA called ELCP Step 50, mandating a 5% reduction within 1 hour. 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later at 5:14, they called back and changed that to 10% within an hour. And so we had 1 hour to implement our ELCP Step 50 plan and reduce our load by 10%, as did all 153 local power companies had to meet that requirement. Let's see. I met Brian Hudson, our engineer, in the office immediately thereafter, and we began going through the plan. He had worked on it the day before just in case it was needed. We had talked about it, and so since it had never been used, you can imagine that he needed to do some calculations to figure out how we were going to get 5%, and then we had to double that to 10%. So we met in the office, and then we called in our top linemen and had them go station at our substation so they could be ready in the event that our SCADA system didn't work. They could be on site to press the disconnect button at the breaker and then reconnect in 15 minutes. And so we had a backup plan in case our SCADA system didn't work, and we were using radios to make that communication. One very important point is achieving a 10% load reduction is impossible. Not nearly impossible, it's impossible, because each of our breakers carries a different size load, because it may be commercial, it may be residential, it may be long circuit, it may be short. They're all balanced effectively, but they're not perfect. And so we did our best to meet the 10% requirement within the first hour. After saying that, some of our circuits, like I said, are more heavily loaded, and so we occasionally probably took over 10%, occasionally maybe a little less than 10%, but we tried to balance that over the full time of the Step 50 requirement. At just before 6 a.m., we started rolling blackouts. We posted notices on Twitter and Facebook as soon as we were able to finish our plan and implement those blackouts. I also notified you all by email that morning that it would be happening and what was going on, just so that you would be aware. Our plan called for rolling 15-minute outages. The majority of customers experienced a 15-minute outage every hour and a half. The blackouts lasted from 6 a.m. to 10:40 a.m. In a virtual meeting with utility managers later that morning at 7, TVA described the circumstances that led up to calling ELCP Step 50. They were unable to pump up one of their generation facilities at Raccoon Mountain. This is essentially a hydro pump facility. They pump it when the demand is down, and then they drain it, generating electricity when the demand is up. They were unable to pump it on Christmas Eve because it was so cold, the demand was so high, they had no reserve capacity to even pump up that generation facility. They also lost 3,000 megawatts of capacity that they had contracted on the transmission system from the neighboring utilities. They lost that because there was a curtailment due to they were having the same problems that TVA was, so they couldn't depend on that power. And so they had to look to the utilities to find 3,000 megawatts immediately. As you can see on that graph, at 6 a.m., when they made the call to local power companies, the blue line, which takes a drastic dip here, the blue line is the load reduction. The yellow line is the expected peak that they calculated the day before and what they expected to need. The green line is what they actually needed, and they were nowhere near going to be able to meet that peak of 34,000 megawatts. And so as soon as they made the call to local power companies, you can see they dropped about 3,000 megawatts of power. So local power companies saved the day in this circumstance when they needed to. They prevented a cascading shutdown of the TVA system. If we hadn't met that load, they would have initiated step 60, which is where TVA essentially starts cutting off substations and utilities for an unknown length of time until they can balance the system. And so thankfully that didn't happen. It was already unprecedented, but that would have been sort of like the Texas ERCOT situation where you just got people out in the cold and then no way to restart the system because it was 15 degrees, 10 degrees that morning. Very cold. TVA has taken full responsibility for the failures that occurred, both in communication with us and delivery to our customers and to us, as well as load forecasting. You can see in that image there from TVA, their load forecasting was drastically under the peak that they had to deliver that morning. They've named this winter storm Elliott. Some facts about Elliott: they set a record for power supplied in a 24-hour period and the highest winter peak demand for Friday the 23rd. That 24-hour period, they used generated 740 gigawatts, and the peak was 33 gigawatt, like 33,000 megawatts or 33.4 gigawatts of power. They also set the highest weekend peak that Saturday morning at 31.7 gigawatts. So while the blame for this event lands squarely on TVA, I've requested analysis of how our performance went, and TVA is analyzing that for us just to see if our plan worked and how we can improve our plan for next time.
And is TVA making some changes so that if
Yes.
this presents again, then they do have a backup plan?
We have a meeting tomorrow morning with the PPA board with TVA in the room. There's an after incident type review going on right now. Jeff Lyash has spoken to that and said they're going to involve local power companies. There's a lot of upset local power companies right now, just like there are a lot of upset customers that this is unprecedented that they couldn't meet the needs of the customer base. And so, yes, why do we have two generating facilities shut down at Cumberland? Why did we not plan for being able to not get power from the grid when it was too cold and they couldn't supply it? Like, why do these things happen?
That's kind of predictable, yeah.
Right.
Well,
My question is how many coal-fired and gas-fired plants were offline?
Well, they said the first day, which was the Friday the 23rd, they said they lost 7,200 megawatts with various contracting issues that couldn't supply and lost generation. I think there was more that day. It was the first really, really cold day, I think, that Friday morning. They lost Cumberland, which has 2 units there and like 3,000 megawatts there, plus some other things that they were able to get back online, but just not fast enough to meet the peak.
and Rob and I were having all these conversations via text during the day while he is on conference calls with TVA. And so I just wanted y'all to see how much was going on in the background of those decisions and just how our Oxford Utility Superintendent really stepped up to save the day. And I greatly appreciate your hard work and dedication, Rob. And just keep us posted if there's anything once you get an evaluation of how we withstood it. If there are changes that we need to make, certainly let us know.
I will. I think there will be a full review even of ELCP Step 50 and see if there's a better way to do it. I mean, since it's unprecedented, I think they're going to take a nice long look at how it could be improved, because if it's happened once, it's bound to happen again. I mean, this storm was really, really cold, but is it the worst storm ever? I don't know. I mean, I've only been alive.
It was only cold for 32 hours.
Right. I think it could have been worse, to be honest with you. If this had been a weekday and there had been more businesses open. I mean, it was Christmas Eve, so things were closed.
Right.
And it was even sunny on that Saturday. That's what kind of saved the day. They were able to warm, everything warmed back up, and the kind of the heaters were able to cycle in the residential throughout the valley, and it probably saved it from being longer of a rolling blackout.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Anybody have any questions
Any
for
other
Rob?
questions?
All right, thank you, sir. At this time, I'd like to announce an upcoming vacancy on our school board. We will have a vacancy that comes up in March, and we are asking people who are interested to please submit a letter of interest to cityhall@oxfordms.net. And we will accept those letters of interest for the next several weeks, and then we will have an interview process before naming a new member to the Oxford School District Board. So if you're interested or you know anyone that's interested, please ask them to send in a letter of interest. Chief Gardner, request permission to approve a sole source purchase from Zoll for 2 X-Series defibrillators for the Oxford Fire Department.
Yes, ma'am. These are the 2 new defibrillators we're getting for the trucks so that when we get our people trained in advanced EMT and paramedic, we'll have the equipment that we need to operate, and it's $61,681.
And whoever makes the motion, include as part of your motion, the letter that explains why it's sole source, so it can talk with Fayette County Hospital and, they gotta make that part of it. I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Mr. Levy, consider a request from M&N Excavators to pause the contract after substantial completion for the South 18th Street extended basketball court due to weather constraints.
So M&N, I don't know if y'all have driven by South 18th, they broke ground on the basketball site last week, and they were going to be preparing the gravel base this week and forming later this week and into next week. They're requesting to pause the contract after reaching substantial completion, which will be reached by February 11th. And the reason is they're waiting for warmer conditions for the coating surface. The concrete slab has to cure for 30 days. And then in addition, the coating surface must be installed over a 10-day period, where over the entire 10 days, the temperature above 55 degrees. If the board grants a request, I'll track the weather dates following that February 11th, which, by the way, the slab will be in, the goals will be up.
So people can play, just won't have the surface on it yet, and then we'll have to close it to put the surface on it.
And if they don't meet that substantial, they'll be in the delayed.
And we don't want them to put the surface down, it's expensive until we're gonna have 10 days of good weather so that it's right, so.
So, did they just not look at that before they, did sign the contract?
I don't know that the subcontractor had a conversation with the general. That's a specialty product, and it's not only that, but I think it was the 30 days. I don't think they realized they had a cure for 30 days. So they may could have gotten it done, but we're past the point of them being able to do it now. So.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Rihanna, request permission to accept quarterly material bids for the Development Services, Street Department, and Public Works.
I've looked over all these.
Excellent. We, the only thing we did not receive quarterly bids were for our chemicals, and Rob and Russ have been working to secure quotes for that, so we'll proceed with quotes on those. And the ductile iron pipes, there was no bids received for ductile iron pipe. So, we do request permission to accept the bids that we did receive, and we're going to continue working to solve our pipe issues.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Request permission to accept warranty deeds for the dedication of right-of-way in Owens Place. Rihanna?
Yes, these are deeds that have been approved by council already for the dedication of the streets in Owens Place. The board previously accepted infrastructure contingent on receipt of these deeds. So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Request permission to approve task order number 8 for Wagoner Engineering for program development and support services.
This is an annual task order that we've had with Wagner Engineering. This is just a renewal for the next contract year, and under this task order, there's a variety of services. Specifically, one is for our applications for our RAISE grant. They work with us to complete that grant each year, among a variety of other services. The not to exceed cost is $55,000, and that has been budgeted.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Request permission to apply for the 2023 RAISE Planning Grant for West Jackson Avenue Improvement Project.
Yes, now that we have that task order under approval, I would like to request permission for us to apply for the RAISE grant again. They've moved our application period up, and so these applications are due at the end of February, and we would like to reapply again for the planning grant for our, I'm excited about it too, about the West Jackson Avenue improvement project. And this grant would be for the planning phase. It's approximately going to be approximately $3 million that we're asking for.
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? And one thing that I forgot to mention in my mayor's report is that Mr. Taylor and I will be representing us in Oxford, representing Oxford in Jackson next week. at the Mississippi Municipal League Midwinter Conference. I meant to mention that. I appreciate you going, Mr. Taylor. At this time, I will ask the board to consider an executive session.
Motion made. Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? The board